Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, it's a special day. You see, Death Note, there's very few pieces of fiction out there I would look at and say, you're perfect from top to bottom, I wouldn't change a thing. But for me, there's only two items in that category. It's Death Note and it's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. These are, to me, two perfectly told stories that have just resonated with me so deeply. So imagine my excitement when I see a little leak online. They're saying, Death Note, Killer Within, trademark submitted by Bandai. I'm like, okay, it can't be a 3D arena fighter. Certainly, I'd hope not. This has to be something different. And they had to have had a dang good idea to all these years later green light a Death Note video game. Why do I say that? Because there really isn't any sort of Death Note video game. I mean, there's three right here, all on the Nintendo DS, but all of them, as you can see, are completely in Japanese. And what's kind of interesting is the cover of this one here actually has the same finger puppets that we're going to play as in the newly announced Death Note Killer Within. So it turns out this is kind of an Among Us style game. And look, as we were leading into the eventual announcement of this, I was really hoping it was going to be like a visual novel style game, Zero Escape inspired, Danganronpa inspired, maybe like a spin-off story or a continuation of Death Note in video game form, just something that was really exciting and would continue this story in a new and unique way. But they went with a team-based Among Us style game. And look, for us Death Note fans, we'll take what we can get right now when it comes to games. I had to check this out. It's free on PS Plus. It's $10 otherwise. You can also pay $20 for the special edition, so it's not asking too much for you. I haven't played any sort of Among Us since 2020 where I have like 10 hours logged in it. I was never big on the Among Us wave, but I am big on anything Death Note. So I figured if there is any type of Among Us style game to win me over, it's going to be this one. Is that the case? We're going to talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new here and you're into nostalgic, retrospective, or the occasional review content, consider subscribing. So there's two sides. I recommend that you play the tutorial before you dive into anything else in this game because there are some layers to the experience, but it does thin out pretty quickly, as I'll get into. So you have L side, which is a team of investigators, and what you're going to do is run around and interrogate people on this map, collect information. If you're playing as L himself, you'll be able to issue joint investigations, and joint investigations allow you to basically speed up the investigation process at certain points throughout the map. A really good time to use this is when Kira on the other team issues some sort of new world order that'll end up in a bunch of dead bodies on the ground, and so you have to investigate those, and if you have more people at once investigating them, it'll go by a little bit quicker. So you can issue joint investigations. The risk with that is that people can grab your ID and they can pass the ID to Kira, who can then kill you off. So on the L side of things, you're just collecting data, trying to deduce who exactly is Kira. Now, if you're playing as L himself, you'll also have command cards. One that you can issue, for example, will allow you to put up surveillance cameras in certain parts of the map. Another will allow people to collaborate to identify who is on your team, like who is an investigator or who is one of the Kira followers. Meanwhile, on the Kira side of things, it's pretty simple, right? You have the Death Note. You can write people's names in the Death Note and kill them off. If you choose to do so, you want to do so in a quiet area where no one else can see it. And then you have your followers of Kira who are going to run around, collect people's names, collect people's IDs, and you're going to deduce who exactly are L's investigators. And if you can take them all out, you'll win. Or if you can initiate a new world order by getting that to 100, you also win there. So with the kind of ground rules laid out, how does the experience fare over even a brief amount of time? Well, there are some problems here, unfortunately. One I have to address right out the gate because I think it's kind of unbelievable that they launched the game with this being a thing. If someone leaves the room, it's over. It kicks everyone out back to the lobby. So what happens very frequently, in my case, 4 times in a single hour, is you'll be playing the game, someone will get killed via the Death Note, and they'll want to leave the game after, which I think is fair and understandable. So they'll leave, and then it says so-and-so left the game, so they'll put them on blast with their PSN up there, and after they get put on blast, everyone gets kicked back to the lobby. It's like, yo, what? Now, the first time it happened, second time it happened, I went, okay, whatever. But on the 4th time it happened, at the end of the gameplay I recorded for this video, they literally crashed the game right after. So I was like, okay, there's a big problem here with people rage quitting. You don't get XP, for example, if you played a little bit of the game, made some progress in it, and then it ends up unfinished. Now, apparently there are plans for bans for players who are doing this sort of thing frequently, but I can also kind of get the other side of the coin of when you lose here, you don't want to be tied to this game. You want to go out, play, investigate, or try your chance at being Kira. That would be really fun, right? But the game kind of binds you to it. And I don't know, it's one thing if you're playing in a group of friends, but it's another if you're doing what I was doing, which was just surfing through random lobbies online. With that in mind, my oh my are people getting into it. I did not turn on my microphone, but I had it playing out of my PS5 controller, and I will just say some MW2 lobby energy was coming out of Death Note, which was very surprising. But I mean, people were really getting into the investigation. Like, no, what are you saying? I'm not Kira. And I will definitely say, just like with Among Us, playing this game with friends or playing this game in a lobby with your mic on will definitely be much more enjoyable, because I tried both sides of the coin. I tried lobbies where the mics were on and they were hot, and it was definitely really funny because, like, my first game, I was just getting my bearings, so I'm just running around following people, trolling them a little bit, and all I hear is them like, get away from me, Maddie, get away from me, Maddie. And like, they just did not want me near them at all, and they immediately tried to suss me out, and when they cuffed me up, they're like, damn, man, he's trolling us. And so it's kind of fun to just, you know, have those social elements attached to the game. It definitely elevates it a lot. When I switched on over to no microphones and you rely on the in-game text, there's a lot of great communication tools here that I think made it kind of easy to deduce who's who, what people are trying to say. And I think kudos to the devs on that, because it did make the experience accessible on both ends. Like, if you're not social enough, or you just don't have the energy, or you're not in the room or the right environment where you can be doing these sorts of things, I think that the text chat does do the job really well. But when you're in voice chat, I think it adds a whole other layer of intensity, of accusations, all that fun stuff that you know from Among Us. The question is, like, okay, well, what makes it different from Among Us? The first thing is the team environment. Again, granted, I have not played Among Us in like 4 years, so maybe they added more team modes, but for me, in my experience with Among Us, it was like 1v7 or something like that, and you're just trying to secretly take everyone out. In this game, it's 2 teams of 5, and you're not really sure who's even on your own team, which I think is also really cool. In the terms of separation, like, one thing I think this game fails at that I had a problem with is there's not enough tasks. So let's say you're the L investigator, you're going to be running around interacting with these little green finger puppets on the map, and you're going to ask them questions by putting in a bunch of right analog stick directions. And then sometimes the game will give you a side objective, like tail this individual, so you'll have to get near them and investigate them, which obviously puts you on their radar, because, you know, when you get close to anyone in this game, they immediately start to suss you out. So it creates a little bit of conflict, or sometimes you'll need to go into a room and survey that. So there are little tasks like that that you're going to want to do, and that's going to build up the investigation side of the board. Now, you can max either side out to 100 based on how much investigating you do, how much evidence you collect, or how many New World Orders you put into effect as Kira, one or the other. But any of the games I played never even got close to that. It was usually pretty easy to deduce who's who, and I think it's because of the lack of tasks on the map, because everyone's kind of doing the same thing. And so if anyone acts out of order, it's pretty immediately obvious, like, that's probably Kira. Like, I even tested it myself. The second I started acting out and doing things a little bit out of order, right away the lobby lit up with, like, it's Maddie. Like, it's got to be Maddie. Even when it clearly wasn't me, like, I knew for a fact it wasn't me, I would do these tests where I would, instead of, like, helping with the investigation when a New World Order came in, I'd, like, stand off to the side, just kind of act a little sus. And immediately, when you're not playing the game how it's supposed to be played, the whole lobby catches fire and they go right after you, make a bad accusation. Then it's revealed, like, oh, you're an investigator. And if your ID is not secure, you're as good as dead the next round. And so there becomes a very predictable format, a predictable element to it, because you want to eliminate these investigators, because if you don't, they're going to likely figure out you're Kira. So again, there's a level of predictability in these matches, and I feel like that is the biggest miss of the game. It's not that, oh, this is kind of like a familiar formula. It's that Among Us gave you a lot of different tasks to do, and just like in this game, when certain tasks pop up on the map, they'll cover the entirety of the screen, so you can't see who's around you. And the reason that's important is because it'll say you're working with 3 people, but there could be like 5 around you, and one of them's Kira collecting your ID to go write your name down in the death note somewhere else, or he could be writing it down in the room itself, whatever it may be. That is kind of the trick here, is the lacking of interesting tasks to do. Like, I would say within 2 or 3 hours, I was immediately getting like a little bored. I'm like, okay, you know, this is just the same old, same old. And so what it kind of sizes up to be is a lot of what we expected. Like, oh, this is just a cheap whatever game. I don't know if they're gauging interest for more stuff with Death Note. That's why I went ahead and put my money down on this game, because I thought, you know what? If they are thinking about doing more Death Note stuff, I at least want to put my money right there and tell Bandai, like, hey, as someone who has, by the way, complained a lot about having only 3D anime fighters, I like that you're trying something new here, and I like that it's priced fairly. I just think for some people it might get boring kind of quickly. So what is the hook in all of this? As you're completing these matches, you're going to get player experience, and this will level up your progression track. And yeah, it's basically a battle pass. So as you're going through the game, you're going to get all sorts of pieces of equipment that you can put on your little finger puppet. You can get different outfits. Like for me, when I fired mine up and I got the special edition, I had a Kira outfit that I went ahead and put on. And for me, that was like, of course, I love Light. I just think his character is so awesome and interesting and dark-hearted that I was like, I have to play as him. But then eventually I got more into the customization. And yeah, as you play more, you level up this pass more, and you'll get more items. The cooler ones are naturally held in the premium side of things, which you can also pay for. But otherwise, like, it's a very tight-knit game. Like, there's a training mode you can do if you want to go ahead and mess around and learn the game further. Surprisingly, there is a full-on trophy list with a platinum attached to it, which I will admit definitely got my interest, but there was some trophies there that looked really tough. Like, winning a game as Kira via the New World Order is really tough, again, because of the way the game is structured. It's just, I don't know how else to put it. It's just so easy to get caught in this game or to identify who Kira is, that you'll just almost never get to that point unless everyone in the lobby is just not paying attention at all or AFKing. That said, as a Death Note fan, it's just cool to see a game. I don't know how else to put it. Like, we're definitely eating table scraps right now. I'm not going to pretend we're not. But it's cool to see L again, Kira again, in like a full-fledged 3D model in a video game, and to hear other Death Note fans. You know, I was a late adopter of Death Note, so to me it's like the most exciting thing ever when I meet people who adore Death Note like I do. Again, I think it's one of the best stories ever told. So I'm obsessed with it. And to see that like these 3 games here didn't even make their way to the US, I'm like, I would totally play these, even if it is just recovering the entirety of the Death Note story. This one in particular, however, is the prologue to Death Note, and it's focused on L, which I thought was really cool. So I think there's potential for other Death Note games. Like, I hope if Bandai does anything, it is something like that, because I think there is a ceiling to Death Note games that doesn't require a massive budget. I mean, clearly this game is indicative of that. It has some Death Note spirit to it, but overall, like, I think if you wanted to make a Death Note visual novel with investigation elements, I mean, Sonic, for God's sakes, got a free 3-hour one. So I do hope there is a point in time that they invest in a true Death Note game. Maybe this is a step in that direction, but ultimately my verdict on the game is, even as a diehard Death Note fan, like, it's all right. Like, it's cool to be here. They didn't really use any of the show's music or anything like that, which is against a lot of like my core, right? I always slam on these anime games for, you know, using the anime screenshots and the anime music in the games. But in this case, I think Death Note soundtrack is one of the best I've ever heard. So I would have loved to get a little bit more of that in context with the game, but it was very Virtue's Last Reward from the Zero Escape series, Coded, which fit really well. The soundtrack was great, but yeah, there's not, I think, a ton here for you to really sink your teeth into. But if you're looking for, say, a cheap night of gaming with friends, like $10 tops, you know, it's the equivalent of like going out and getting a Happy Meal and like a couple extra things on the side. So you can stretch this night of fun into 2, 3, maybe. It really hooks you. If you've never played Among Us, this is a great place to start, quite frankly, and just kind of see what all the buzz is about. Maybe you'll find it more refreshing. I think there's a lot more they can do with this game, with the tasks on the map, and obviously adding more maps, just more things to do within the game to make the deduction a little bit more fun. It feels just a little too quickly slapped together, where I'd like full on recommend it, like even to the most diehard of Death Note fans. But if like you're a PS Plus subscriber, free download, go ahead, give it a try, see what it's all about. But ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on Death Note Killer Within. Looking forward to hearing yours down below. Are you going to be checking this game out? And also, hey, you're a fellow Death Note fan, you're always welcome here. I want to hear from you down below. Fire away. Other than that, I will catch you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace